Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I do want to let everyone know this event and all content is being recorded to aid in an executive documentation and for later viewing. Your continued participation is acknowledgement and approval of recording. If you do not consent to recording, please log off at this time. Again, I want to welcome you to DMVA's Virtual Veterans Town Hall. My name is Erica Moore, and I am one of the Regional Program Outreach Coordinators with the PA Vet Connect program at the PA Department of Military and Veteran Affairs. On behalf of DMVA, I want to thank you for joining us this evening. This is the third event in a series of 5 virtual veteran town halls. And tonight's topic is resources for homeless veterans. With me tonight as co-host is Chip Gilland, Chief of Reintegration and Outreach within the department, and James Stafford, Veteran Service Specialist with the PA Vet Connect program. Let's start tonight off with a poll. We would like to get an idea of who is joining us tonight. You will see the poll pop up very shortly. Select the option or options that best describe you. Are you a veteran or have you ever served? A spouse or a surviving spouse? Other family member, caregiver, or advocate and professional? Once you have selected the option or options that best describe you, please click submit to record your response, and we'll give about 10 to 15 seconds to complete this poll. James, can you please share with us the results?
Good evening, everyone. And according to the poll's results, 40% of the respondents are veterans and have served, 43%, and 57% as of right now are advocates or professionals.
Thank you so much, James. Again, we are very excited to have everyone on with us this evening. Throughout the evening, we will have a few additional polls that will appear on the screen, just as the one we just did. We are asking that you take the time to participate. Additionally, at the end of the event, there will be an opportunity to provide us your feedback via a short post town hall survey. That survey will appear as a link that will be placed in the chat panel at the end of the evening. We ask that you please stay with us for the entire town hall, not only to hear all of the valuable information that our advocates and subject matter experts have to share with us, but we would really like to hear your feedback regarding how this event went tonight and if you found it informative. Okay, let's talk about the chat panel. That is the mechanism that you will ask your questions this evening. If you have a general question, please feel free to put your questions in the chat panel. We do have members from our team monitoring the chat throughout the evening. However, all participants will be able to see what is placed in the chat panel. So for this reason, we ask that you refrain from sharing personal issues or situations. If you need to speak with someone one-on-one, please place your first name and last initial and a good way to contact you into the chat panel. For example, Joe S. and a phone number. And someone will contact you within 3 business days. You may also feel free to contact us at the email address on the screen at any time. This is the resource account for the PA Vet Connect program, and our team monitors this account every workday. But for all general questions you may have this evening, feel free to use the chat panel. Our team will be answering them throughout the evening, and we will get to as many as possible. So I hope that at this point, everyone has found their chat panel. It is located at the top of your screen. And if you have not activated it, please do so now by clicking on the icon. We are very lucky to have the subject matter experts on our panel with us this evening. Our panelists have a combined many years of knowledge. Tonight we have Brigadier General Maureen Weigl, DAG for Veteran Affairs, Keisha Kerr, Healthcare Homeless Veterans Program Coordinator, Grant Per Diem Liaison, Bill Reed, Director of Veteran Services from the YWCA, Dana Spain, Director, Community Relations, Volumetric Building Companies, and Micah Snead, Chairman of the Homeless Veterans Committee, Governor's Advisory Council for Veteran Services. At this time, I have the great pleasure to introduce Deputy Adjutant General for Veteran Affairs, Maureen Weigl. Brigadier General Weigl served her country for 25 years in the Army Reserves, active Army, and National Guard components. Since retirement in 2016, She serves on nonprofit boards, which helps veterans and spouses, teaches military history, and remains very active in her community. Ma'am, I will now turn it over to you to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and for your opening remarks.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Erica. Good evening, everybody. It is really my distinct pleasure to welcome you all to this town hall. This is our third, as Erica mentioned, and it's the first year that we've had these town halls. We've really decided this year to be forward-facing to the community. We want your input. We want to know what the issues are for our veterans, and we want to learn from the subject matter experts in our communities. So as you notice on our panel, I am the Deputy Adjutant General for Veteran Affairs with a military background and some nonprofit efforts. But on our expertise, we have Dana Spain, Bill Reed, and Micah and Keisha from the VA. We have folks that worked at policy in homeless areas and talking about homeless insecurity, homelessness, food insecurity, rent issues, landlord issues, all types of problems that veterans are facing. We also have Dana, who's been working effortlessly to build developments and develop property to help veterans have housing. Affordable housing is an extremely important issue for our veterans, and Bill, who runs the YWCA, and Keisha from the VA. I can't speak highly enough of these individuals. I've met them all at many events, and I will tell you, I am extremely interested to learning from them this evening. We're going to talk about homelessness, but there's more to it. If I were to tell you how many veterans in Pennsylvania are homeless, I think my experts will tell me the exact number is somewhere in between 800 and 900. But I will tell you that is grossly underestimating the issues we have with folks facing housing insecurity and affordable housing issues. If you talked about the Veterans Multi-Service Center in Philadelphia and the leadership program out in Pittsburgh, they serve 2,000 to 3,000 veterans a month. So there is clearly a need to help veterans find affordable housing, remain in their houses, come off the streets and find programs. And, you know, I started this job 14 months ago, and my eyes were wide open. And I learned so much from the community experts who are on the streets, learning what the needs are for this population of veterans. Erica mentioned PA Vet Connect. We are trying to really put our arms around all of the resources available across the Commonwealth to help veterans who are in need. My very first interview I did in this position as the DAG VA was out in Pittsburgh, but I did a remote interview with a CBS correspondent from the Harrisburg area. And I was amazed that the woman on the other end of the interview was a captain in the United States Air National Guard from Pennsylvania, who was a single mother. She was still actively serving as a captain, and she was facing housing insecurity. And we were talking about COVID and homelessness and the impacts of COVID. And I realized immediately that I was completely unaware of the issues that are plaguing not only veterans who have served in the past, but veterans who are still currently serving in the reserve component. This is a serious issue. This is something we need to all work towards. And tonight is one way we can have an open discussion with experts in policy and folks who are on the ground working effortlessly to take care of our veterans in the communities. And I really hope you will all listen to what they have to offer, listen to what they're doing, sit back and think, wow, how does that impact what I'm doing? Who do I know that could benefit? How do I find more resources? And if you know of other resources that are available, if they trigger another agency, please use the chat box to let us know what you know. We could all learn tonight. And I think That's the importance of these virtual town halls. So I really want to thank our panelists. I want to thank all of you for your participation. And now I'm going to turn it back to Erica to let the experts take over. But thank you all so much for being here this evening.
Thank you so much, ma'am. At this time, I would like to introduce our first panelist who will share a wealth of knowledge and information on Hud Bash. Keisha Kerr is a licensed clinical social worker, a healthcare homeless veterans program coordinator, and grant and per diem liaison. Keisha, I'm going to start your presentation. Please let me know when to advance on your cue.
Okay, you can advance. Hello, everyone. My name is Keisha Kerr, and I have worked at the VA Medical Center here in Lebanon for about 15 years. So the Hud Bash overview that I'm going to do today is a program that I actually started here at the VA when it came in 2008. So I am here in Lebanon, but Lebanon is a part of a bigger network of Pennsylvania Veteran Integrated Service Network. That's what we call our service area here in Pennsylvania is VISN 4. VISN 4, just to give you a snapshot, has non-VA medical centers, 4 outpatient clinics, 1 mobile clinic, 17 vet centers, and we cover 83 counties within Pennsylvania, parts of West Virginia, Ohio, New Jersey, and New York. Next slide, please. So our medical centers that are in Pennsylvania, our VA medical centers are Altoona, Butler, Coatesville, Erie, Lebanon, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Wilkes-Barre, and Wilmington. Now, this slide consists of the counties. I've kind of broken down the counties. Right in the middle, it's Lebanon. Lebanon, we cover, one of our biggest counties that we cover is Dauphin. So we work within the Hud Bash program. I just want everybody to understand that every medical center within VISN 4 we work with different housing authorities within our catchment area. So this is a breakdown of those counties, because a lot of questions that we get asked a lot is, what counties does this VA cover? If a veteran is in this county, what VA can he get services from if he wants to live? Because we might have a veteran in Lebanon and he might say, okay, I'm in Lebanon, but I would like to live in Coatesville. And we just kind of work with the Coatesville VA to kind of get that veterans there. So we work with all veterans, but certain things within Hud Bash and our certain programs that we would transfer the veteran to that particular VA. All right, next slide, please. So I'm going to provide an overview of one of our most popular programs since 2008. Hud Bash is a program based on Housing First, and I don't know if everybody's familiar with Housing First. Housing First is a model that came out of Pathways in New York, and it centers on basic needs. And basically what Housing First does, the model is we have to get the veterans off the street first, provide basic needs, housing, food, shelter, furniture. And then after we get the veteran off the street, then we can sit down and kind of breathe and say, okay, get you back into society. What is it that you want to do? What is it that you want to get back to? Meaning that we can house a veteran that is actively using. We can house a veteran that is not on their mental health. It's not a contingent of treatment to get help in the Hud Bash program. Now, Hud Bash is a partnership between HUD. HUD provides the vouchers, VA provides the intensive case management services. So that's how I break it down. So every VA has housing authorities that they work with to provide the vouchers. So I'll just say that again. HUD provides the vouchers, VA provide intensive case management. In Lebanon here, we have 361 Hud Bash vouchers, and they are the housing authorities that I work with: Lebanon Housing Authority, Harrisburg Housing Authority, Adams Housing Authority, York, and Cumberland. But the veteran can port their voucher to any of the 9 counties that we cover in Lebanon. So and any of the VAs that are in VISN 4, every medical center has a Hud Bash program. They have a Hud Bash coordinators within, and the veteran can move within those counties. Next slide, please. So how does a veteran get referred to Hud Bash? It's a clinical assessment, and HUD does have an income eligibility. So they will come to the VA. The veteran does have to be screened by a VA social worker, and a VA social worker has to refer the veteran to the Hud Bash program, to the housing authority. So if you have a veteran and you think, okay, this might be an option, I always tell everyone the best place to start with is your VA contact. And I'm going to give you an easy way to do that at the end, because I know sometimes with like kind of assessing the VA can be a little bit hard, but today I'm going to provide you with a really easy button, I promise, at the end. So basically the best way to see, or any homeless services, I don't want to limit it to Hud Bash. I don't want to get into it a lot, but the VA has a lot of other homeless services. Hud Bash is the one that provides permanent housing. But if you think, if you have a homeless veteran and you think there are services out there that the VA can offer, then you can start with the VA with your VA rep. Next slide, please. The good thing about Hud Bash, last year, Hud Bash changed the eligibility. Now, I can tell you this, eligibility can be very, very confusing. And even for us here at the VA, we have to work with Atlanta and our different VA enrollment specialists to figure out if a veteran is honorable and what if a veteran is eligible for VA service. What I usually tell community providers is just call us, let us figure it out, because sometimes a veteran can qualify for some homeless services and not VA services. What we don't want to do is have veterans turn away and there are services that they could possibly get. So the best thing to do is just call us and let us meet with the veteran and then either pull the DD-214, meet with enrollment, and see what services that they qualify for. Next slide, please. The eligibility for Hud Bash is honorable discharge, general discharge other than honorable, and bad conduct discharge from a special court martial. That is a lot to remember. I'm just giving you guys this, but if you have a veteran, just please call your VA rep, because this is a lot of things that could have the veteran, whether they deployed, it really gets into a lot of different things. So if you have a veteran, the best thing to do is just call the VA. All right. Next slide, please. So I'm going to give some data for Pennsylvania Hud Bash data. Right now in Pennsylvania, between the non-medical centers, there are 3,393 Hud Bash vouchers within the state of Pennsylvania. And 2,258 of those veterans are, that's a typo, it's 2,258 veterans are housed with the voucher. So that's something that we're very, very happy about. We still have a lot of work to do, and we are working. I'm going to touch on our we are working on special housing types, especially here in Lebanon, because I don't know if everybody knows, Harrisburg is a very tough area. We just got data that said Harrisburg is the #2 toughest housing market in the country. So with Hud Bash, our population is getting is getting older. And so we want to have alternative housing, special type housing types, single room occupancy, group housing, shared housing, maybe personal care homes. And I'm going to be meeting with Harrisburg Housing Authority. I've met with Adams. So we're going to be looking at some different unique ways how we can house veterans that might look a little bit different in this tough housing market that we're facing. So we are looking at other options to house veterans because of the obstacles of landlords that do not want to take the vouchers. A lot of landlords during the pandemic were hit really hard, so they went out of business. And then if you have one apartment and 19 in Harrisburg, I think the stats were one apartment to 19. I think 19 people looking for an apartment, so it was one apartment to 19. Next slide, please. Hud Bash since 2008. Hud Bash started in 2008. Hud Bash has housed I think a total of 104,000 veterans to get veterans up off the street. Hud Bash has been one of the most successful programs in getting female veterans in housing, and the housing first approach is working to get veterans off the street, and it's not in contingent of any treatment, just taking care of their basic needs and getting them off the streets and then wrapping the services around them once they're in their apartment. Next slide, please. Now, the one thing that I want you to take away from my presentation is this number. If I was with you guys in person, I would give them out. If you want these cards, I can mail them to you. You can talk to James and see if I can get your address. We have these cards. This is how you get in contact with a VA rep. If when you, this 18748 vet, it goes straight wherever the veteran is. This is a hotline, a homeless hotline. This has been existing since, I believe, 2010, 2011. Don't quote me on it. When a homeless veteran calls this line and say, I'm a homeless veteran and I'm in the Harrisburg area, that consult comes straight to Lebanon. In our homeless program, we have a social worker that answers that call every single day, that calls directly to the veteran. If the veteran is not enrolled, he gets enrolled. If the veteran need help, we assist them right there. If you're a community provider and you have a veteran and you need status and you have to call, you're welcome to call this number with the veteran. Somebody will call you back. And it goes straight to the VA of where you are. So if you don't remember anything, please remember this number. Please give it to the veterans. If you see veterans while you're driving, if you want the cards, I can mail you the wallet cards. You can pass it to them. It's toll free. And even with that, if they're saying they don't have a phone and you call us, the VA, we have phones. I have iPhones that I can give to homeless veterans, free text data for 6 months. So everything that a veteran may need, we have available for them at the VA. They call this number. We'll run the Social Security number. We'll see what they're eligible for. This goes to a real live social worker. Next slide, please. Questions. And I saw there were some questions in the chat. But I don't know how you guys want to handle those.
Do you want to, I mean, are you okay, Keisha, if we wait till the end to?
Oh, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I'm here. Okay. Yeah, I'm here. Yep, that's fine.
Okay, thank you so much.
No problem.
I know I learned some stuff just by listening to your presentation, so thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks.
So at this time, we are going to do our first poll question. It should appear on your screen shortly. The question is, do you know who to call if you are experiencing a housing crisis or emergency? And we'll give about 10 to 15 seconds to make your selection.
Erica, according to the polls, 18% of respondents responded 211, 18% responded National Call Center for Homeless Veterans, 4% responded Veterans Crisis Line, and 61% responded all of the above.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So you can call any of the three options if you are experiencing a housing crisis or emergency. So we are going to move ahead and hear some great information on SSVF. Bill Reed is the Director of Veteran Services from the YWCA. Retired Master Chief William Bill Reed retired from the United States Navy in 2006, following a 26-year career. Following his retirement from the U.S. Navy, Bill came to the YWCA of Greater Harrisburg and served as the agency's first Veterans Employment Specialist for the homeless veterans in 2006. He subsequently held the position of Director of Economic and Neighborhood Development Department and currently serves as the Director of Veteran Services Department. Today, the YWCA Veterans Team provides a variety of housing, employment, and supportive services to address the needs of homeless and at-risk veterans and their families throughout the South Central PA. Bill, I'm going to start your presentation. Please let me know when to advance on your cue.
Thank you. Okay, so just to get right into it, a lot of times we talk about what's homelessness, and for providers out there that may be aware of this, there may be some redundancy, but for those who aren't, I just want to just spend a little bit of time talking about some things that maybe we as providers take for granted. And that is, homelessness means different things to different people. There's a federal definition of homelessness, and literal homelessness really is often the key to try and obtain access to homeless services for veterans, especially someone who's going to try to use federal programs. And those are typically people who are on the streets in a place unfit for human habitation, camping, maybe living in their car, in an emergency shelter, safe haven. Maybe they're staying in a hotel that, a nonprofit's paying for, or anyone who's fleeing domestic violence. And so that literal homelessness is really important, because oftentimes the veterans we work with, they see themselves as homeless, but they may not meet that federal definition. So one of the things I just like to leave everybody with is, it's really important if a veteran feels they're homeless or at risk of being homeless, next slide please, to please make sure that they get referred to services and that they make that call. Okay, Erica, next slide please. Other designators that matter. are at risk. Why at risk is important is especially with COVID and some of the impacts it's had on the veterans populations here in Pennsylvania. There's been an expanded access to services, both mainstream and VA, to people who are at risk, which is typically someone that's at risk of losing their housing within the next 21 to 30 days. Also unstably housed individuals. We have a lot of folks who are unstably housed. And so those folks also may have access to services. There's couch surfers who frequently would say that they're homeless. While they may not be homeless, they certainly are at risk. And of course, those who need to have a place to stay. And so now we're on the slides. Oh, I'm sorry, the slides are a little bit jumped, Eric. I think we're like 3 slides ahead.
I'm sorry, Bill, I can go back.
Yeah, how many veterans are homeless? No, I'll just stick with this. I'm sorry. So we'll just go with this. That's fine. Data's data. And I guess my quick question is, will these slides be available to folks if they wanted to get them after the presentation?
Yes, Bill, we can.
Great. So then I'm going to burn through this. So one of the things everybody should understand is that when the federal government tries to determine things like how many veterans are homeless, they rely heavily on data that the VA collects, other federal agencies collect, and especially on an annual count called the point-in-time count. And what happens is every January, the providers and volunteers within all the communities in America, they go out and they try to count how many people are homeless on one given day. And in 2020, HUD reported that there were over 37,000 homeless veterans in the U.S. on that day. And while that's an important number, it's important to understand that over the last 2 years, street homeless weren't counted in the survey because of COVID. So what I'm just trying to tell you with this is that while you'll see reductions and you'll see numbers and you'll see stats, don't take those as a verbatim truth. The fact is that we've been doing a good job, the VA, the community partners, all of those out there, at reducing the number of homeless veterans. It's been about a 50% reduction since 2009, but for every veteran that we do locate, there's plenty of veterans out there that we don't see when we do the counts. And especially for that one-day count of the year, understand that a veteran may not be homeless in January when we do that count, but they may be homeless in March, so they may not be counted. So therefore, the number is typically larger than what is going to get reported officially. Next slide. Okay, and again, as I talked about the point-in-time count in PA, per last year, it showed on that one given night about 724 homeless veterans that were in emergency shelters or homeless transitional housing programs. And again, it didn't count those that were actually on the street. We know as an agency that we have seen a significant increase in overall street homelessness since the COVID pandemic. And of course, a significant number of those were impacted by COVID. We also know that while the estimate right now, and I think you've heard this number before, is between 800 and 900 homeless veterans on a given night, it's likely 2 to 2.5 times that number over a year. Next slide. Sorry, next slide. Okay, so what I want to get into now really quick is just some of the key reasons of why individuals are homeless, especially veterans. And this data is, there's going to be some great links at the end of this. You can go if you love data and you want to do some deep research. There's links on where all of this information came from. And so the primary factors that we have found that contribute to veteran homelessness are problematic military discharges, severe mental illness, substance use, social isolation, financial instability. They may have experienced military sexual trauma or intimate partner violence. And oftentimes it's a combination of all these factors. Next slide, please. And what we know is that veterans make up a proportionally higher rate of homeless individuals than the general population. And problematic military discharges are significant contributors to this. What we don't know is the other factors that happen with that discharge. Did they happen while they were in the military? Did they happen as something that happened prior to entering the military? But what we do know is that oftentimes these military discharges are related to misconduct, and that misconduct could be related to situations that happened while they were in the military or prior to the military, like mental health, trauma, other things. And anyone who served in the military knows that whether you're deployed or you're not deployed, it can be a very hectic, demanding way to work, to get things done. The people of the U.S., as a veteran, I could say, really humble myself as a veteran, but they also put veterans on pedestals. They say basically, veterans are great, they're awesome. There's a lot of pressure that comes with that. So, putting yourself in that veteran's, shoes, if they go in, they raise their right hand, they want to serve, and for some reason they aren't able to successfully complete their military discharge, oftentimes they end up becoming homeless. Next slide, please. Mental illness. When I started doing this, when Keisha started doing this, a few years ago, I would say about a third of the homeless veterans, maybe 40% that we saw, had some significant mental illness. Now it's more common that they have significant mental illness or co-occurring, meaning mental illness and some kinds of substance use problems than not. We see a lot of mental illness challenges, and COVID has especially made this problem more difficult. There's a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear that happened, and that definitely contributed to the veteran homelessness that we've witnessed here in this area. One of the problems with mental illness is that oftentimes the folks who are dealing with it, because of their mental illness, may not seek or be able to properly follow up with the care they need to be successful. There may be stigmas attached to that. The mental health system is very, very busy and oftentimes overwhelmed. And so mental illness can really not only contribute to veteran homelessness, but cause it to be sustained for a lengthy period of time. And we found that, especially with veterans dealing with mental illness, the sooner we can get them connected to services and support them receiving those services, the better and the more likely they're going to be successful. Next slide, please. Substance use often is a coping mechanism. While it may lead to the veteran becoming homeless, it can contribute to the dissolving of their support network. It's also a way that people often try to cope with the situation they're in. It often leads to social isolation, other kinds of health issues with the legal system, which further complicate their ability to maintain stable housing. And I'm sure everybody out there is aware that there's an opioid epidemic. And this opioid epidemic has hit at the same time that we're dealing with all these other challenges. So unfortunately, the supply of opioids is still abundant, and it contributes not just to veteran homelessness, but loss of life and many other kinds of issues. So substance use still continues to be one of the primary factors that contributes to veterans homelessness and keeps veterans homeless. Next slide, please. Social isolation. This is really one of the aspects of veteran homelessness that really comes to life when doing street outreach. Here in Harrisburg, if we're down by the 83 bridge or under the Mulberry Street Bridge, or in the winter doing winter overnight, being homeless can be a very lonely process. And oftentimes the combination of the lack of self-esteem, the lack of support network, ongoing feelings of failure, inability to cope, this can lead to social isolation. And the problem with that is it breaks down their family networks, their friend and support networks. It can contribute to even greater isolation. It makes it more difficult to connect them to services. It's a major, major risk for suicide because there's not someone there saying, hey, are you going to harm yourself? So it's a huge risk factor. And of course, the stigma of homelessness just reinforces that shame and contributes to that low self-esteem and feelings that many of these veterans have, that they're just really not worthy, and why should I continue to try and improve my life? Next slide, please. And then financial instability. The last 2 years have been quite a roller coaster. If someone lost or had a bad discharge, for example, or they were at a low pay grade when they were discharged, or they incurred a lot of debt while they were in the military or prior to the military, that could contribute to this. Stress, the impact on housing stability, the breakup of the housing unit, financial instability where older veterans lose a spouse who is a money earner, or they develop a chronic illness and they can no longer work at the level they were going to, but they're not able to retire. These all contribute to homelessness. The lack of employment options, following discharge, working with people in the Guard, if they come back, reconnecting to their jobs, making sure that they're able to continue that income and maintain connection to those resources that they need to have stability. Leaving the military service, I can share with everybody that while I did 26 years and I love the military, there's not a day I don't miss it. And my transition was not smooth. I felt my transition was smooth until someone reminded me that I wasn't the person I used to be. And I said to myself, wow, I really haven't just automatically become a civilian because I took my uniform off and put a suit and tie on. And so if you have these other factors and you don't have the support network and you're not able to see that transition is a problem, for a lot of veterans, this is an underlying cause that leads to other issues that then lead to homelessness. And then, of course, the higher cost of living and loss of military subsidies and supports. Someone's been in the military for a while and they have a housing allowance. Maybe they're using base housing. They have access to other kinds of services and they lose those. It just may not be easy for them to transition, and sometimes that can lead to loss of financial stability and then, of course, homelessness. Next slide, please. And then military sexual trauma, it's huge. Military sexual trauma, there's an increased rate of homelessness right at discharge. And over the next 5 years, that doubles. And it's an even higher rate for men. So military sexual trauma is just such a challenge. And this is where, once that's identified, making sure that we don't re-victimize that homeless veteran and making sure we get them connected to someone to help them is really critical with veterans who are dealing with this really, really daunting challenge. And the same goes for individuals fleeing domestic violence or intimate partner violence. That loss of trust, that loss of belief, it can really just put that person, just pull the rug right out from under them. And sadly and frequently it leads to homelessness. Next slide, please. So there's a lot of data on these slides. So what I'm just going to simply summarize is saying this, and it's already been said before, there's just not enough affordable housing around here. If you're someone who's at 30% of the average median income for an area, you're lucky if there's 3 rental units for every 10 people. And if you're at the 50 to 31%, you're still facing huge challenges. And then, of course, Keisha just shared that Harrisburg is one of the most challenging rental markets. So homeless veterans that are trying to find affordable rental housing, or people who are seeking this when they leave the military or dealing with other things in their life, there's a real challenge for them to find affordable housing. And sadly, more and more today, just the lack of affordable housing is what's leading to these individuals becoming homeless. And COVID really increased that. As has been said earlier, a lot of landlords, they with the moratorium on rental evictions, they just stopped. And at the same time, there was a shortage of affordable housing to purchase. So at the same time, you have landlords who can't collect rent or who've really been burdened themselves out there trying to deal with this. You have individuals who are ready to buy homes who can't, that are also competing for the same housing. And typically what happens is the landlords turn around and they either demand higher rents because they can get them to try and reimburse themselves for the monies they lost. They're less willing to work with programs. They increase the minimum incomes that people need to earn before they're willing to rent to them. And what's really tragic is sometimes just sell their properties and move on. And so this is kind of a perfect storm that we're dealing with right now. And then I would say in South Central PA is one of the biggest challenges we face as a provider is finding and maintaining and nurturing our landlords. Next slide, please. So if we look at this, 70% of extremely low and 25% of those low-income families are severely burdened, which means that more than half of their income is spent just on keeping that roof over their head. So if you have someone who's spending that much of their income and anything happens, they have an injury, they can't work, their car breaks down, there's just so many different things. The opportunity to become homeless is just so much greater. And this is a problem that's continuing to grow. Currently, and then my data is about a month or so old, there was a shortage of 266,618 units of affordable housing for extremely low income individuals in Pennsylvania. That means if we could, wave a magic wand just to hit level, to be level where we need to be right now to meet the need, tomorrow we would need to automatically have 266,000 plus rental units show up, affordable rental units. So this is a real challenge that we're all facing. Next slide, please. So really quick, some steps that we can take. I just like to share this because those slides are all bummers. And someone might ask why I've been doing this for so long. It's because we have a lot of successes. We really do. Pennsylvania is a great state with great people and great members of our community who all want to help. These are just some quick pictures of our most recent veteran stand down here at the farm show. And we had over 100 veterans, and I'll bet we had almost as many people who came out to help and volunteer. How about it, Keisha? Well, she's probably muted her speaker, but I'm watching her nod. And that means that we can make a difference in a little way. And every little bit really makes a huge difference in helping homeless veterans and helping ending homeless veteran challenges here in PA. Next slide, please. There's just a few agencies I want to share with you that I think you might find interesting. I would recommend anybody who wants to know more about how we're trying to end veterans homelessness to look up this agency. You can just Google them, and it's the United States Interagency Council on Homelessness. And so it's the USICH. So what I'm just going to say is, if you want to Google, there you go right to the slide. USICH is the place to go. There's a wealth of information, all the different programs that are out there trying to help end veterans homelessness. I think I'm getting the hook here to try and move on quickly, so I will. The things we can do is just make sure that we don't assume when we're walking by somebody that they're not homeless. Don't assume that we see homelessness and it's always that person sitting with a sign on the street corner. Don't be afraid to ask. And I remember General Weigl's comments about the captain and who was at risk of, maybe losing their housing. Don't be afraid to talk to veterans, older veterans. PA has a lot of older veterans in crisis. Don't be afraid to ask people, hey, how are you doing? How is your housing? How do you have needs? And then, use the resources that are out there to connect them to individuals that want to help. I'll end with this slide just saying, these are some great resources. If you really want to dig further, I highly recommend that you do so. And of course, always the last slide has my information. You're always free to call me. I'm Bill. Just give me a call if you want to ask a question. If there's any way I can help, I'd be happy to do so. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bill. I know that DMVA always enjoys partnering with you for the stand down and helping the veterans that are homeless in our community. So thank you so much for your presentation.
You're welcome. Thank you.
At this time, we are going to do our second poll question that should appear on your screen shortly. In 2021, 19,750 veterans were experiencing sheltered homelessness. This amount represents what percentage of all sheltered adults experiencing homelessness in the United States? We'll give about 10 to 15 seconds to answer that question.
Erica, according to the polls, 33% responded 8%, 50% responded 18%, 25% responded 5%, and 5% responded 14%.
Yes, the answer is B, 8%. Out of the 19,750 veterans experiencing sheltered homelessness, it was represented 8% of the sheltered adults experiencing homelessness in PA. So thank you so much. So we are going to move on to our next presenter to hear some information on some affordable housing options. Dana Spain is the Director in Community Relations from Volumetrics Building Companies. Dana is a serial entrepreneur and philanthropist who got her drive and passion and dedication to her community from her parents. Having discovered the benefits of building high-density modular projects, Dana joined VBC in January of 2019 to help expand the reach of modular to join forces with a leading visionary in the industry. Dana is working with VBC and 29 plus modular factories nationwide on rapid housing solutions to address the affordable and supportive housing crisis in Pennsylvania. Thank you so much for joining us, Dana.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here. I'm going to be a little less data-driven and perhaps a little more uplifting in the sense that I have been involved in military and veterans affairs for about 2 decades. I did not have the honor of wearing the uniform, what Bugs Bunny would refer to as a 4F, because I have very bad joints. So my service is to those who have served, and it's my honor and privilege to do so. I founded and ran a small but mighty shelter for female veterans here in Philadelphia called Haven Women, and we are a transitional program bringing women literally off the street and out of addiction programs and other referral sources to help them make better choices, put them through really rigorous enrichment programs, including financial literacy and job training, even cooking classes and how to shop and cook healthy on a budget. We're a safe, sober environment here in Philadelphia, and we house 12 ladies at a time. What I would tell you is that our system overall, and I'm saying the system in the big sense, is broken. We don't have as we've been talking about in the chat, sort of a central place for one to come and seek all of the benefits that they're entitled to from their service, and understand really where they should go, as Bill just pointed out, if they have mental health issues, if they have substance abuse issues. It's sort of ad hoc, and unfortunately, all of us here on this call try our best, and yet there's often forums like this that bring us all together, and then we make connections and we do great work. But there's often people who fall through the cracks because they don't have the access to the programs that are out there, and there are lots of them. So when I was running Haven, when ladies were ready to make positive choices, they either had their full disability or partial benefits in a job or a full-time job or any combination, and are ready to make the next step to permanent housing, the system failed them. They didn't have affordable permanent housing ready for that next step. So in connection with what I do for a living, which is building buildings, and I brought this problem to my dad, who passed last year. He was an Army vet and had a real soft spot, really thought that veterans weren't taken care of in our country the way that they should be, with real benefits and real plans for once they separate from the military. And this is our first project under the VBC Giving Foundation, which is the Veterans Village. And I have a rendering of it behind me. It's a 47-unit apartment building. And Eric, I don't know if you have some slides that I sent you earlier of our apartments in the building. We have 47 units of studios, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and 3 bedroom apartments. We are working with private funders. We are not taking any city, state, or federal money to do this. This is all done through private funding and donor partnerships to both present the building as permanent housing solutions and also present furnished apartments, completely furnished down to the last knife, spoon, and fork in certain cases where people are coming out directly out of sheltering or addiction recovery programs or other places where they don't have their own stuff. The 2 and 3 bedroom apartments are very specifically to reunite families. Our Haven ladies often lose their children into the system while they're in our shelter and have the opportunity to be reunited with them if they have safe permanent housing. And that's what this is for. We were going back and forth a little bit in the chat about affordable housing and why developers don't develop it. I have a private real estate development company. This is being built under my charitable flag, but the obstacles put in place to affordable housing is really what negates people from getting into affordable housing in the first place. I have made it my mission and the mission of this charity to work with developers and agencies across the country to let them know that there are other ways of developing affordable housing affordably and with traditional structured financing, and how to fundraise for that, or how to go to their local banks and then refi out through an agency such as USDA, HUD, Fannie, Freddie, and really make it sustainable. We have a model that is both traditional market rents at affordable levels, which could be 30, 50, 80% AMI, depending on which region we're in, and also Hud Bash and some non-veteran city rental vouchers. So the template is there, and we're willing to share it with anybody and everybody across the country who wants to understand how to build affordable housing affordably so that we can in vulnerable populations, especially veterans, and we're working now on potentially senior housing for veterans, really how to make it all happen, because it is a possibility. There's a lot of obstacles that are thrown in your way from a private perspective, but there's also a lot of programs that can be used to get veterans the housing that they need. And this is not somebody's broom closet that was painted with a coat of paint and hey, I'm going to accept subsidies. I saw in the chat earlier that somebody was asking about a landlord constantly raising rent because they know that they can get additional subsidies if they raise rents. Our whole focus with the BBC Giving Foundation is how to build new construction affordably so that people can live in respectable, safe, resilient housing and be proud of where they live and use it potentially as a springboard into their own home or live with us forever, but know that they're in a safe environment, that we are not going to gouge them for rent, and they're living in market rate new construction, except that it's affordable to veterans. I don't have a lot of statistics other than to say that this is very doable. And we're hoping that agencies across the country and developers across the country join us in this movement to build affordable housing, because it can be done. And we know that it can be because we're doing it.
Thank you so much, Dana. I know that myself and James came out to visit your facility, and we were just amazed at what affordable housing could look like. So thank you so much for everything that you're doing, and we will put your information in the chat for everybody if they have any questions to contact you.
Absolutely. I welcome it. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. I see the chat blowing up, so that's exciting. And we will definitely get to some of those questions at the very end. I just want to remind everyone that if you do have a general question, please put them in the chat panel. So at this time, we're going to do our third and final poll question that should appear on your screen. Approximately 1.5 million veterans are considered at risk of homelessness due to, and there's a few choices to choose from, and then we'll give about 10 to 15 seconds, and we will go over the answer.
Erica, according to the respondents, 95%, an overwhelming 95% responded to all of the above. However, 5% responded to overcrowded housing. Very interesting.
Yes, thank you. There are many factors that veterans can be facing that could contribute to housing crisis and or homelessness. So yes, definitely all three of those options and many, many more that we could list, especially some of the ones that Bill showed on his slide. But thank you so much. So our last presenter is Micah Snead, the chairman of the Homeless Veterans Committee, the Governor's Advisory Council for Veteran Services. Micah enlisted into the Marine Corps in February of 2002 as a combat correspondent. After deploying twice in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom, Micah was honorably discharged in May of 2006. While completing a Bachelor of Arts in History at the University of South Carolina, Micah found another passion for service, working with nonprofits serving low and no income families. Thank you so much, Micah, for joining us, and I can't wait to hear your presentation.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, Erica. So first, let me just say it's a privilege to have a seat on the Governor's Advisory Council on Veteran Services. And it's especially an honor because it's been a passion and a career for me to work in the homelessness space. So it's a real honor to be co-chair of the council's homeless committee. I am a poor substitute, as you'll find, for the countless veteran service providers across the Commonwealth who really put in the work day to day, night by night to end veteran homelessness. But I'm really proud to represent them this evening and wanted to take just a second really to talk about communities across Pennsylvania that have ended veteran homelessness and what that means if you're not familiar with some of the benchmarks. In short, based on the United States Interagency Council on Homelessness, if you are able to identify or when you identify a homeless veteran in your community, if you have a housing resource that can permanently end their homelessness. So not just that you have enough shelter beds, not that you have enough transitional housing or grant per diem beds, for example, for veterans, but that you can permanently end their homelessness if it's an option that works for them. But we have had a lot of success over the years, and folks have been in this space for a while. Remember the Mayor's Challenge and Built for Zero. What was it? 100,000 homes before it was Built for Zero. Vets at Home. There have been, kind of almost countless, but really only since 2009, 2010, where we've seen these national pushes to end veteran homelessness locally. But shout out to Lancaster City and County, Philly City and County, Reading and Berks County, Scranton, Lackawanna County, the Lehigh Valley, and then just down the street from me here, Delco, Delaware County, who have met over the last, I want to say 5 to 6 years, who have met those benchmarks for ending veteran homelessness. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to say, well, wait a minute, I know a lot of homeless veterans. That is very true. In particular, if we look at Philly, that has much larger numbers than many other areas of the state, where we used to see 10, 11, 13% of the homeless population there be veterans. It's now, when we look at the data, closer to 2 to 3%. So it really is within reach and within the resources that we have in a place like Philly to just squash veteran homelessness. But that said, everybody on this call, I'm sure, is familiar with all the challenges that have been discussed. But so just wanted to note that, and also to say that if you're concerned about the issue, as we all probably should be, thinking about affordable housing and housing instability across Pennsylvania, but there are maps, there are guidelines and efforts that could be replicated from these communities. Not everybody has to be the city and county of Philly. But like I said, as you can see, there's been success in Lancaster. There's been success in the Lehigh Valley. And so we encourage folks to follow up with those communities and to share. And so on that note, let me get back to the Governor's Advisory Council on Veteran Services, where I co-chair the Homeless Committee. General Weigl is our chair as the Deputy Adjutant General. The Veterans Advisory Council, or GAC-VS, if you'll forgive me, but again, I'm sure folks on this call are used to jargon and alphabet soup. The GAC-VS was established on Veterans Day back in 2013 as Pennsylvania's first interagency cooperative approach to veterans services. The goal of the council, or the mission of the council, I should say, is to review, evaluate, and assess programs that serve state veterans. And we do that by pairing senior staff, cabinet members from state agencies, members of other commissions, within people from the public, veteran service providers, the VA, all the different partners that we can kind of pull together, all with the goal of increasing information sharing, making sure that programs are being implemented the way they were written or the way that they can best serve veteran. Coordination, there's been a little bit of chatter about that in the chat and questions about coordination across programs, and really to make sure that we have impactful services that are accessible to veterans across Pennsylvania. So no matter where you find yourself in need of services or just availing yourself of the benefits that veterans have earned, we want to make sure that those are working well, and whether or not that we're identifying that and improve it. So the GAC has a handful of committees that, again, are comprised of state, federal, and county personnel who've got a vested interest in serving veterans. Each committee is chaired by a subject matter expert, or me, in the case of the Homeless Committee. And we're really just facilitators, bringing the group together, identifying things that we want to work on, doing some information sharing. Just for overview, those committees are aging, our Homeless Committee, health promotions, employment, education, and workforce development. There is a committee dedicated to issues for women veterans, and then veterans in public service and judiciary. So as you can imagine, each of these committees affects veterans who experience homelessness, and each committee is impacted by veterans experiencing homelessness. And so the larger GAC-VS may get tired of us constantly kind of beating the drum on homelessness, but it really is the end result when a veteran experiences homelessness that indicates to us that we have failed, or we have a lack of resources, or a combination of both. But the good news is we know how to solve veteran homelessness, and our committee is committed to ensuring that state government is pulling or rowing all in the same direction. On that note, I wanted to just quickly, if I can find it, or if I can't, I will not do it so quickly, but before we get off the call, and then I'll make sure we include it with the notes, is a link to an interest form that if you want to participate in the GAC's Homeless Committee, we'd love to have you. So it's just a couple of questions, collect your name, contact information, past experience or interest in working with us, and happy to get you on there. And obviously you can shoot us an email if you'd like to find out more information about the GAC-VS at large. Our Homeless Committee has had several initiatives and goals over the years, kind of things, small things we can work at, smaller bites of the apple, if you will, versus larger bites of the apple, or sometimes we just try to eat the whole bag. In particular, over the last couple of years, we've really focused on the impacts of COVID-19. As you all know, I'm sure that COVID-19 affected all of our housing and safety programs, everything from either cooling shelters in the summer, warming shelters in the winter, year-round emergency shelters, but also even affordable housing. You know, this economy that we find ourselves in, and Bill spoke to this really well, especially with rising inflation, is absolutely going to have a short and long-term impact on what's already a very tight and expensive housing market. If we see, first-time home buyers not buying homes because that mortgage is suddenly more expensive, or they've had employment instability over the years, then they might stay a renter, or they might stay doubled up, and all those things can, all those little kind of drops can trickle together and form a pretty massive waterfall that puts downward pressure on our housing market. Just a couple other highlights, and then would love to just kind of ask questions and answer questions and talk more. One example I always like to brag about is the Judiciary Committee, and Pennsylvania's Department of Corrections has just done an unbelievable job, both of addressing veterans who work within the correction system and veterans who find themselves involved in the correction systems. As you all can imagine, discharge or exits from corrections, especially for veterans, can have indicate a high rate of recidivism or return. both to homelessness or housing instability, but also returns to corrections, which is not the goal. We don't want to create a recycling machine in our corrections department. So shout out to the Judiciary Committee, has done tremendous work there. Women veteran, this is another issue that we see is some of the data that we can see that there is a rising percentage of women veterans and specifically women veterans experiencing homelessness. And so really important to continue to ID issues specifically around that, to get more veteran services officers who are women veterans, get more county staff who work in veteran services who are women and can address those issues really well. One example is with the aging committee, for example, we want to work on housing options for aging veterans. And at the state level, so everybody knows, that that seems like an easy thing, right? Like, oh, how many people do you need to get together to kind of screw in that light bulb? Well, unfortunately, just by hook or crook or regulation or legislature, aging veterans could cut across the Department of Community and Economic Development. It might have some funding or other programs that are at Department of Human Services. It might have funding or other services at the Department of Health. Pennsylvania has the Department of Aging. And so all of a sudden we have to pull folks from every different agency who have their own ways of doing things, own requirements, own intake forms. I think that was the point that was brought up earlier about looking at universal intake and universal access for all these programs and benefits. So that's really the kind of work we want to do here at state government. And so really happy to have folks join us if interested. And I managed to find that link, and I'll just drop that in the chat real quick. So if you are interested, we just meet once a month, so we're not going to kill you with meetings or with emails. We try not anyway. We just have a monthly meeting that we just shifted to the third Thursday. So we'd love to have you, but if you're not able to join us, just let us know, and we can find more role for you. There's certainly plenty of work to be done. I think the last point I wanted to make before just talking about some areas that we do see like room for improvement, but also room for investment, additional resources, and really getting all of you on the same page with us and us on the same page with you. But before I get to that, I just wanted to note that, I said earlier that we know how to solve for homelessness, right? It's housing. And so we know that to provide housing to all the homeless veterans in Pennsylvania, that's not a problem. But to solve an individual's homelessness, we don't know what the answer is. We have to ask that individual. We have to involve them in the process and find out what type of housing for, whether it's rent assistance or a permanent housing voucher, whether it's employment, education, family reunification, kind of everything you can imagine, and many of the issues that Bill went over earlier. It's really important to know that solving an individual's experience of homelessness is going to have many different factors. And this is why we need to work so much harder to align state government, whether it's state funding or federal funding, whether it's local providers or statewide providers, but to bring alignment around so that we're rowing in the same direction is just so important. But just shout out to our friends at the VA, the big VA and DMVA, have just done a tremendous job of shifting policies and programs over the years. And maybe it's been too slow for some of us, but progress is progress and we'll take it. And one that Keisha spoke to earlier was implementing housing first in our programs and saying that we're going to start with housing without preconditions, and then we're going to work to address all the other issues. Because if you haven't experienced homelessness or housing instability, you know that is a daily and nightly fight for survival. And it's hard to address your mental health. It's hard to address employment. It's hard to address education, family reunification, when you are literally moving every hour of every day. And if we can stabilize someone in housing first, we can address all those other issues. It becomes so much easier to let that pressure off. And so just a couple of areas for kind of investment and improvement that we're working on through our committee at the GACVS. Government coordination is a big one, especially in investments. We could probably spend an hour and a half just talking the alphabet soup of Is it COC funding or ESG funding or CDBG or CSBG or Hud Bash or SSVF? And if I've lost you, congratulations, you're in the system now. You know exactly how it feels. So coordination across agencies and leadership from agencies, whether it is your city, your township, your borough, your county, your state rep, your state senator, the governor's office, whoever it is, we need all hands on deck if we're going to knock this thing out. And we know that we can, and we've seen it, right? Communities across Pennsylvania have provided the proof of how to end veteran homelessness, and we just need to double down on their efforts. And then last, I just want to shout out for landlord engagement strategies. And this is a little bit of a pat on the back because I wrote some of these documents when I was working as a HUD technical assistance provider a couple of years ago. But we've absolutely got to bring more landlords to the table. And I also want to share a great opportunity here that the VA has about how landlords can help us in veteran homelessness. You know, there is no requirement on landlords in Pennsylvania to accept a housing or a rental subsidy from a person. If I come to a landlord and want to rent one of Dana's units, she can screen me just like she screens every other tenant, right? And so just because we have the vouchers or the resources to house all homeless veterans in Pennsylvania, we literally don't have the units, and we need landlords to be a part of that. And whether that's developing more units or just kind of unlocking existing units and have somebody say like, yes, I will exclusively rent my property to vets. So really important. You can, if you are a landlord, you can submit today your property to the PAHousingSearch.com website, which is run by our friends over at Pennsylvania Housing and Finance Authority or agency. So just want to give a shout out to that. But knowing that we're tight on time, let me stop there and just thank everybody for being here and see what else we can do to end veteran homelessness. We know how to do it. We have a lot of the resources that can get us a long way toward it. We just really need the leadership and the energy all focused in the same direction to get there. Thanks, Erica.
Thank you so much, Micah. And that concludes our panelists for this evening. Chip and James, are there any questions from the chat panel that haven't been answered?
Hi, Erica. I do have a question here in the panel. I believe this may be directed toward Keisha Kerr and Bill Reed in regards to coordinated entry. It says that are there options for agencies to participate in coordinated entry specifically? Can someone talk about a coordinated entry in the process of and how someone can reach the community providers?
Yes, I'll answer the first part. We actually have a coordinated specialist here at Lebanon because Lebanon, we're in 5 coordinated entry programs because of our 9 counties, and they can reach us simply by even calling the 187 number or going through our coordinated entry specialist. Her name is Erica Poulard, and she's actually we're actually a coordinated entry center here at Lebanon for the Eastern. We put in all the veterans in the HMIS system, and HMIS, that's Homeless Management Information Systems. Sorry. I just wanted to back up something for what Micah said because I wanted everybody to know for the landlord engagement. I just wanted to let everybody know that every VA medical center and just this is Lebanon. So when you call these VA medical centers, just know that we have been given a part of the American Rescue Plan, ARP funds. VA medical centers have been given funds, and because of COVID, we have been able to pay landlords. We have here at Lebanon, we've been doing some because of the federal emergency on COVID, the VA have given us funds that we can do things that we couldn't have done. So we've had landlords who said, look, the pandemic hit me really bad. I need tile. I need to paint. We have gone to Home Depot and bought that. And we have paid security deposits. So the ARP funds give us flexibility. We've been giving landlord incentives as far as double security deposits, things like that, helping us give a 6 months lease if they think, okay, well, the veteran's background is a little bit sketchy. So we do have, with that landlord incentive that Michael did talk about, we do have the federal, at the VA level, we do have ARP funds, and we have been using those funds to get landlords. So if you are a landlord or you know a landlord, reach out to your local VA, and they can be very flexible as to what they can do to bring a landlord on board.
Again, Erica, excuse me, again, Keisha, the VA Housing Crisis Hotline, would that be a great way for landlords to for folks to reach out to the VA and make those initial connections?
No, if they're in, depending on the county, they can look at the chart and see what county they're in. If they're in Lebanon, they can call me. They can always call me at my extension here because I have housing specialists and I can connect them to the housing specialist. They're going to have to call the VA coordinator at the VA, but I can provide that information after the meeting of all the coordinators for our 9 VAs in Pennsylvania.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
And what I'd add is with coordinated entry, if it's not VA specific, coordinated entry is really tied to the Continuums of Care, which is really the group within a community that manages all the different homeless services, comes up with a 5 or 10 year plan on how they're going to end homelessness. And so HUD has a great site that can connect you to the Continuums of Care, or you can simply Google your community and use the term Continuum of Care. There's 2 balanced estate continuums of care that cover a large amount of counties, and then some of the larger cities and areas are their own unique. But that is really one of the agencies, if you want to connect the service to the Continuum of Care, I would just reach out to them and they can help you become part of coordinated entry. And the same applies to landlords. If you have a landlord who wants to be a partner in helping develop ways to bring affordable housing to homeless individuals, including homeless veterans, going through the Continuum of Care, every one of them has a housing committee, and the housing committees are really interested in bringing landlords on board and hearing their stories and understanding what their needs are, so we can do that. And of course, the VA is a big partner with all the Continuums of Care, so what's really great is there's no wrong door with coordinated entry. If you reach out to one or the other, we'll make sure you get connected to who you need to be connected with to be a contributor or be part of the solution.
Bill, I'd like to dovetail on that, in that there's a lot of market rate developers, especially here in Philadelphia County. We have now density bonuses if a developer offers affordable housing, but I think there's such a lack of education for a market rate developer to understand the Hud Bash and city subsidies that are available for rent. And they have some trepidation about renting to veterans, especially, or anyone coming out of transitional or sheltering or addiction programs. Is there any sort of resource for landlords to understand why it's not a bad idea to rent to veterans who may have some issues? We all have some issues, don't we? But I feel like in my for-profit side, there's a lot of developers who think it's a really great idea, but they really have trepidation because they don't really understand the process, and they're a little concerned about what it looks like and whether they're actually going to get paid those subsidies and what kind of, quote, trouble the veterans might cause. Is there any sort of educational program for landlords?
I'd like to say there's a specific, but really there isn't. And I think a lot of that is because every community, and Keisha could also speak to this with Hud Bash, every community's housing authority, every community has a unique approach to how they deal with housing and how they deal with things like vouchers or access to supported services. So, that would be a great initiative, is to have some kind of and I think I'm also speaking to Micah and the advantages we see of trying to have more standardization in some of these things. But until that time, really the best way is for them to reach out to the housing authority and to the Continuums of Care and say, hey, listen, I want to know more. Tell me why I should take this risk. Explain this to me. And different programs like the Supported Services for Veterans Families, Healthcare for Homeless Veterans programs, the continuums themselves, have people who can sit down and talk to these developers and explain to them, hey, this is why it makes sense, and also listen. And if say a developer's had a bad experience, find out what that is. Some communities are offering landlord incentives. I know there's a lot of American Recovery Act funds right now flowing through the different communities in the state, and what's really challenging for developers is that every one of those communities is allowed to sit down and set priorities and prioritize where those funds go. Now that's great because it gives the communities the ability to really tailor where those monies are going to go. But the challenge is just like you said, Dana, if you're a landlord and you've never done that kind of collaborative partnership, you may not even realize that this money is there. It's there to develop housing resources, and therefore they may miss out on that opportunity to provide a great service like the modular community, that you're building. And so it's really important as soon as possible for them to reach out to the housing authorities and to the county and city housing programs, housing redevelopment authorities, and share their interests so that they can be brought on board and they can become part of that solution.
Yeah, I was just going to add that the HUD, so there's lots of HUD landlord resources. The last link I put is specific to housing choice vouchers, which is a different program, of course, but very similar to Hud Bash, very similar to SSVF and kind of what to expect. But also that landlord engagement systems, the link is in there somewhere. Erica promised me she's going to unload all my links on y'all afterwards. But there is some really specific points for case managers, coordinators, kind of local points of contact to talk about. And we've seen from other communities that, if we stop asking for units for homeless veterans and start asking for units for veterans, we see an uptick, right? Like just dropping that. And
right.
being real clear.
I totally get that. And I understand working with Impact Services, for example, in Kensington and working in Haven, even though a housing first model makes a lot of sense, there are some people who are just not ready to live indoors and live in an apartment, especially by themselves, without direct intervention and supervision. So I get that. I think what I'm coming from is we have a lack of housing units. The government is not building housing units. They're not in the business of building housing. They don't know how to do it. And if they did, it would probably cost 18 times what it costs for a private developer to build housing. Where can we be proactive rather than asking the developers to go to a portal or a link or a resource? How do we communally reach out to the real estate development community and say, it behooves you to include our folks in your pro forma and in your plan because their rent is going to be paid and they're great people. They served our country proudly and they are structured and disciplined and yeah, they have problems. Everybody has problems, but they're going to be great tenants and it's going to be great for your building. And we're proactively reaching out as opposed to expecting that landlords are going to find the various resources and links that help them through the morass that is the bureaucracy. Here in Philadelphia, the housing authority does not make it easy for you to become a landlord for, I'm going to speak to veterans, a landlord for veterans, period. I don't know about other homeless populations or transitional populations, but they put a lot of obstacles in the way. But if you surpass that obstacle, there's almost no inspections, there's no nothing. I mean, I've seen places where we're putting our Haven ladies into abject squalor, where a landlord can lease and get subsidies for an apartment that doesn't even have a suite of appliances. So I feel like we have a disconnect of both ends. We need the people who are in the business of providing quality housing to be more engaged than they are. How do we reach them and encourage them to build the housing that we need on a massive level? Bill's talking about, 200,000 units that we could use across the Commonwealth. How do we engage those people and say, this is going to be worth your while and you're not going to regret it because we're going to help you through the process, as opposed to them coming to us and trying to find the resources?
So thank you.
And not expect an answer right now. I'm just putting that out there for engagement, because we need to engage the people who know how to build things.
But I think we've done that. I could just answer that for you. I can just speak to in Lebanon what we have done even before landlord engagements. We never waited for the landlord to go out to us. We have gone out and just in Lebanon, just going out and educating the landlord and even working with PFHA and working with World of Properties, working with HUD and working with other places. We have been able to bring people on board. And now we have where landlords call us directly when they have units and just ensuring them, like you said, walking them through that step, saying it's going to be a case manager, because we call our landlords monthly saying, is everything okay? We're going in the veteran's house. We're going through the yearly inspection. So I think it just has to be a continued conversation and just, like you said, community engagement and going out and talking and just saying, here's what we can do. But everybody has to make the effort. It's
You should come on down to Philadelphia, my love. We need you here.
I mean, I'm a community organizer. I'm from Baltimore, so community organization is my first love. I do that very well. So I brought that with me from Baltimore. So basically, I never wanted the 9-county catchment area that we have here at Lebanon to see us as a building in Lebanon. Bill can speak that all our social workers are in the community. When I started working, my number one thing was community engagement, because I wanted the community to know the veterans are in your community and the VA is right here beside you helping you. So,
I love that.
Yeah, so that's the thing.
And Dana, I would just say, because we're running close on time, is this is a wonderful conversation. And after this ends, please reach out to me, because I feel like what you have to say, and Mike, I'm thinking about the Governor's Advisory Council. This would be a great topic maybe for one of our meetings. How are there ways that we could connect with developers proactively and explain to them that it makes sense. So on a larger scale, not just at what we're doing locally, I'm thinking Keisha, but on a larger scale in PA. So Dana, I agree. I think there's more I think there's a lot happening, but I think there's more we could do. And I think, you have some really great points there.
Super. Well, thanks everybody. I need to sign off. I'm actually running a little late, but I really appreciated being invited this evening and meeting everybody. And I'm sure we're going to connect. And Erica, if you'd like to share my contact information, if anybody wants to follow up with me, happy to talk to everybody and anybody about affordable housing.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And as we, as we end our meeting, I would just a quick word, as Dana was talking about, how can we connect everyone? The PA Vet Connect team, we are here to be that bridge. Keisha Kerr is in the Lebanon VA, and they're in Division 4. Bill Reed is in the Harrisburg area. So how can we bring those pieces to different communities? Dana Spain is in the Philadelphia area. It's a collaboration. Though communities are separated, the PA Vet Connect team we are here to bridge those channels. What happens in one area, though it may be 4 counties away, can benefit the other. The information Keisha is sharing today, it can work across the entire Commonwealth, as well as everything that Mike is discussing across the entire Commonwealth, as well as what Bill is discussing across the entire Commonwealth. The PA Vet Connect team, we're here to sit on those discussion boards, those community action groups, those coordinated entry meetings, and to bring those pieces from one community to the other. And I ask everyone to once again refer to the chat, the PA Vet Connect link, as well as the homeless crisis outreach link. They're all in the chat room. And one thing to mention, 211 is a coordinated entry phone number that folks can call, as well as the Veterans Housing Crisis Hotline. And that is another way to reach the same, there are no wrong doors. So with that being said, I'll turn it over to Erica. Thank you.
Thank you so much, James. And thank you so much for our panelists. I would like to remind you all that you should be seeing a link to the post-event survey in the chat box. We are asking that before you log off, you click on the link and complete the survey. It will take you to a form with a few questions to gather some feedback on the town hall. If for some reason you feel that your question wasn't answered or you didn't feel comfortable putting it in the chat panel, please reach out to us at our resource account, ra-mvvet-connect@pa.gov. And a member of the PA Vet Connect staff does monitor it every single work day. When sending the email, please indicate which county you are from so we can forward it to the appropriate region. At this time, I would like to thank everyone for joining us this evening, all the attendees, and especially our panelists, subject matter experts, and veteran advocates. Please do join us for the next upcoming town halls. September 14th, we will be having a town hall on transportation issues facing veterans, and November 2nd, honoring veterans for their service and sacrifice. Again, I thank you all for joining us, and I hope you all have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you, Erica. Thanks, James.
Thank you. Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks, y'all.